Media, and today we have another episode of Co-Creating Act with Rebecca K. White. And today we're going to learn a little bit more about her and her journey in the art world, and some of her processes and her pieces. And I hope you guys enjoy this one. And we're going to start with our first question, which is, who is Rebecca K. White?
I'm an artist. I am a musician, an entrepreneur, a designer. But before all those things, I am a human. I think like being a human as a creative person and doing your best to show up as a whole human being is kind of like fundamental to being able to be a true creative person.
You say you are a musician?
Yeah, my background is in music. I was a music major in college.
Really?
And yeah, I took some art classes, like drawing classes on the side, but my focus at that time was music.
What do you play?
Piano.
Piano?
Yeah.
Is it classical or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. I've always been interested in playing piano, but I couldn't figure out the keys. I couldn't figure out the keys. My father bought me like one of those playful ones, the little toy ones, but it was huge.
Yeah.
But all I did was, how they had the already set play tunes and
yeah.
I used to just press that and then clang it on and everything. But that's interesting. How long have you been playing the piano and stuff?
I started studying when I was 7. And so I studied from that time until I guess I was 21.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever want to take that further, or?
I wanted to, but I actually ended up changing majors and I stopped playing altogether for quite a long time. I ended up struggling with a chronic pain that was sort of directly related to the practice. Because as a classical musician, if you're a classical performance major, you spend 3 or 4 hours a day in the practice room, and I was just having sort of unmanageable pain that I couldn't get any doctors to understand or diagnose. They were like, there's no physical reason for you to be having these issues. And so the only solution I could see was to just stop completely. And I changed a major. My professors worked with me to let me finish school basically on time. I didn't have to start over because I changed majors in my senior year. And so like after that I was a bit lost. It was like I don't even know what to do because my identity had been entirely wrapped up in that and being a musician.
Is that when you found design, or is that when you?
Yeah, in essence, it took a little while. I mean, I got out of school, and my first job outside of school was I was working in a frame shop. I learned how to do art framing.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I did that for, I don't know, maybe a year or something like that. And then a friend of mine introduced me to a woman that ran a design studio, and she was looking for like a studio assistant person to like get coffee and clean up messes and pretty quickly I was like running accounts and dealing with clients and dealing with invoicing and learning design work, and I learned how to run a studio basically. And I spent a few years there and then struck out on my own.
That's awesome. That's amazing to hear. So while you were involved as being a studio assistant, basically, were you still drawing and sketching and still doing art?
Some of the time, yeah, I was. I had a little studio space, a shared space with another musician, and I did some like house portraits in the neighborhood. We lived in a historic neighborhood, so I was like out drawing people's homes. But I was really struggling with imposter syndrome feeling very lost after the experience of like disconnecting from my music career, and it was like there was some promise, but I did not know how to put one foot in front of the other. I couldn't figure it out. And so before too long, I gave up the space and just was more like full-time at the design studio. And I really let all of my personal creativity go for quite a while.
That's interesting that you said you let your personal creativity go, but when it comes to designing, that takes a lot of creativity itself.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. But I guess, you know, when you're creating something for a client to meet specific business needs, you know, there's a lot of parameters that go into making sure that the end product is what they need. And your own like personal vision, personal creativity can be part of it, but doesn't necessarily end up being part of it. It's not personal expression. For me, that's how I have understood it. It's really not personal expression. It's like applying design tools to the client's problems or needs to deliver a product that helps them move their business forward in the world.
So would you say, when it comes to art, would you say that art to you is mainly personal expression, or do you feel like there's more?
It's a blend. Like it, in a lot of ways, it is very much personal expression. It's kind of the way that I have learned to be my best human, you know, like through creation and through artistic work, I'm able to process the things that happen to me or happen in the world. And like I'm making kind of a record of that journey. And so it's become like my own personal catharsis or healing process, right? So it is very personal, it's very expressive, but on the other hand, a lot of times those pieces that I create are a larger communication. It's not just my emotions, it's like I'm saying something that I feel needs to be said in the world.
When it comes to your creativity, because you're speaking on a personal expression, and do you feel like your creativity is triggered by, is more triggered externally or internally? Or because I feel that even though you were dealing with the clients as a designer, I feel like you're the type of person that, this is just me, just going off impression, I feel like you're the type of person who maybe wouldn't be too comfortable creating something that doesn't fully express you, in a sense. So for you to, which you're still in design.
Yes, I
So
still
for
work
you to
with a
still
lot of
be in that field, I find that interesting. How do you find that balance between those two, allowing yourself to, in a way, I'm gonna put it in a way that I don't think people might approve of, but like in a way of collaborating your creativity, and then on the other side, making your creativity only for you. How do you find the balance of being that person in the middle?
Yeah.
Like, how do you work with that?
Yeah. I mean, so a lot of my clients, my design clients, people that I've worked with and now and in the past, a lot of their business or their thing that they're doing in the world is related to social impact. So whether it's a nonprofit or a government organization or a business that has a sort of net positive impact in the world, it's been really important to me to make sure that I kind of align with what they're putting forward or agree with the impact that their business or product or organization has on the community. And so I do feel like a strong sense of purpose around that work, because it's like I believe in what they're doing. It's not just commercial whatever for the sake of making money, although there's nothing wrong with that, obviously. But there's also like an intention and a consciousness about like using our gifts and our talents and our our business acumen to create positive change in the world.
I like that. So in a way, you're still that part of you is still being expressed, like the nature, your nature is still involved in the client's piece in a way.
Yes, okay. I would agree with that. That's a great way of putting it.
I like that.
Thank you.
That's very good. That's very good. So you were originally more focused on music, and then unfortunately life happens, and and then you found your way to design. How did you end up in the artist realm, and to say?
Yeah.
Like, what was the transformation that allowed you to give yourself the grace to try, or the bravery to try?
So, I think the period of time between letting my music go and connecting with art again was probably 10-15 years, something like that. And I found myself feeling like I was missing something. I was missing like a sense of fulfillment or a sense of purpose, even though, like I said, I was working with clients that I believe in what they do and I think it's meaningful. It was like something is missing. And, I was looking at my personal life. My personal life is very good, everything around me is great. There's no reason for me to feel discontent, right? So what's going on here? And I began working with a therapist, an alternative healer, and we did like several years of working through things like hypnosis and different emotional catharsis practices that helped me move through a lot of fear, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of negativity, grief around the loss of music, all of these things, to uncover that like I was like severely creatively blocked because of all that stuff. And in getting through some of those things, I found the impulse to create again.
What was the first piece that you created, if you can remember?
Oh man.
Because I feel like it would have had to be something that's, that triggered you, or something that means a lot, maybe.
I'm trying to think what maybe like the very first one, I'm not sure, but I know like some of the first ones that I created are actually these guys over here on the wall behind me.
Beautiful.
And they're part of a series that I called Insomnia Landscapes. And the name comes from like in this period of all this work I was doing, trying to deal with my emotions and my whatever. I was experiencing a lot of insomnia, and I had a troubled mind basically, and I found that when that would happen, when I would wake up in the middle of the night, it would just be like, awake, and I couldn't sleep no matter what I did. And I started coming in here, and I didn't want to turn any bright lights on because I wanted to keep things like really mellow to get sleepy again. And I started, I just found the black paper and the pastels, and I just started kind of like creating these soft, amorphous, landscape-ish things. And I found I would then be able to go back to sleep. And it was like, creative muse kind of violently waking me up in the middle of the night because something needed to come through. And once that came through, then I could find rest.
Interesting. It's it's interesting to me how you say like there's it was like you were being woken up violently to release this thing that's on your heart almost.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it was like you're creating something soft and nature like.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like you were looking for the calm in a way, like
Yeah.
the peace in a way, and you were struggling. So you decided to create that peace for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, it was like you were being, I wouldn't say called, but I tend to say that.
Mm-hmm.
You were being called to something that could almost give you the peace that you've been looking for outside of music.
Yeah.
It still allows you to create in a way, but it's just your personal own melody and your personal creations. So after that, what gave you the motivation to keep creating? I hope it wasn't a constant waking up in the middle of the night.
No, I mean, I went through a period of a few months where that was happening a lot, and I made most of the pieces in that series through that time period. But after that, it was kind of like I started to recognize that I needed that. And it was like, okay, well, maybe if I just make time for that during the day, I won't have to do it in the middle of the night. And yeah, it kind of works out, you know? It's like the time, prioritizing the space and time for that personal creativity is really important.
Yeah.
And it creates a kind of peace or a kind of equilibrium.
Yeah.
Because when you go into creation, or at least when I do, like I'm working something out. I'm expressing something. If it's a thought, if it's a response to something that's happened out there in the world, if it's a response to something that's going on inside of me, it's a way of like transferring that energy out of myself, out of my body, out of my psyche, into a physical form.
This is probably going to be this question just came into my mind. Do you listen to music when you create?
Sometimes.
Sometimes?
I do, yeah. Not always. And it depends really on what I'm creating. If I am working on something that requires a whole lot of thought, like conscious processing, not so much, because I have such a deep relationship with music, it can be really distracting because I start analyzing it and hearing things, and I'm like, oh, this, you know, they're doing this over here and they're doing it, and that's distracting me from the work at hand. So sometimes yes, sometimes no. A lot of times I'll be listening to something pretty ambient, just very atmospheric, because that doesn't get in my way.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting. It's like, because I thought it would be, well, just my thought. I thought it would be more calming if you mix those two together. Because I don't feel that art is a replacement for your love of music. So I thought maybe it would be an enhancement if you did it that way. So
when I'm doing a really repetitive process, like printmaking, for example, I listen to music when I'm doing that, because I have there's a set of connected tasks that I just like do the one, do the other, do the, you know, like an assembly line almost, and you just get in the flow and you get in the zone, and I love listening to like really loud, obnoxious music when I'm doing that.
That's interesting. Speaking of printmaking, would you say that's your style specifically, or how would you explain your style?
It's mostly abstract, very expressionistic, a lot of kind of organic, natural feeling to it, like derived of the earth type of feeling. I do like painting and drawing, some mixed media work and some printmaking and some like hybrid stuff. I really enjoy using less traditional materials. Like I have a number of pieces that are on cardboard, for example, and some of my paintings will be using things like coffee or tea or ashes. You know, a lot of my works incorporate ash. So I enjoy literally pulling things from nature into the works themselves.
The word nature keeps coming up.
Mm.
It's interesting. So would you say that most of your pieces are based on portraying, displaying nature? Like I said, everything is kind of like surrounded around showing a sign of nature, more like that type of landscape and kind of idea. Is that what you tend to go for, or does it just comes out that way?
I feel like the materials have a natural or organic feeling, and I have done some landscape pieces, but very few. I think it's more like the quality, you know, or like the vibe is
very calm and peaceful.
Nature oriented, yeah.
Okay. Maybe that's what I'm picking up on.
Yeah.
No misunderstanding. So musician, designer, artist. You know, they say the life of an artist is not exactly the most fun or rewarding life. Sometimes a lot of people struggle with getting exhibitions, galleries to accept their work, and etc. How has your life been as an artist?
It's been really good so far. I have focused less on like chasing down exhibitions and things like that, and more on building relationships with people, personal connections. I love any opportunity to show work in a gallery or things like that, but that's not the only way, you know? I think building a community around you that loves your work and wants to support you is kind of the key, at least for me. And so that's really been my focus, is building quality relationships with people and sharing my work openly with people, no matter who they are, no matter whether they are interested in buying work or not, you know, or interested in showing my work or not, but rather just having good engagement around the work.
I like that. There was a piece that you showcased a while ago. I think it's called 98 in
Yeah.
Love. It was very interesting to me. I think it's I may be wrong as far as what it's made of. Is it glass?
98.
Yeah.
It's a piece on cardboard, and it has charcoal and pastel and Palo Santo ash in it. And do you know the story behind the piece?
No, I don't. I was hoping you would share.
Yeah. So the piece commemorates the collapse of the Champlain Towers South building that took place in June 2021. It's called 98 for the 98 people that perished in that tragedy. I was not personally connected to anyone that lived in that building at the time, but I was going through a very difficult time personally. We had experienced like serious illness. We had just like 4 or 5 deaths in our family in a very short period of time. It was a really bad time. There was a lot of grief in the house, and when that happened, it just hit me so hard. And so that artwork was my way of like dealing with the grief that I felt. And even though, like I said, I didn't know anyone personally that had lived in the building, I had many friends who did, you know. And so I felt their grief, I felt their suffering, and just as a community as a whole, it was terrifying. And so it was my way of working through the grief. It was very meditative, and it was I created it. If you see it, it's a dark background with these little white forms on top. But the background isn't black, actually. It's like layers and layers and layers of color blended with charcoal, so it has this real velvety, deep texture. And the little forms on top from a distance appear to be just white, perhaps, but if you take a closer look, there's all these sort of prismatic colors surrounding them. So the intention of the piece was to recognize the individuals and just communicate that they're not lost, they're not gone, they're still here, they're, you know, their lives and their love is still present.
That's amazing. That's very commendable. I think that's very beautiful. And I have to apologize for lying. I did see it and I did read it. I just wanted you to explain it. Forgive me for that.
No, not at all.
I just wanted you to explain it and
Yeah, of
to
course.
hear it from you.
Of course.
And I wanted you to share it. It's an amazing piece, and it was very heartwarming. It touched me a lot. Speaking of, you know, well, it's a terrible transition, but well, it's not a terrible transition. It's just the way I'm saying it does not go too well. Speaking of, you know, heartwarming and you know, things that are happening that are not so good. A question that I like to ask most of the artists that I interview is, how is your mental health?
It's something that is a really important question. I'm really glad that you bring that up. It's something that I'm sort of passionate about.
Likewise.
I believe that as artists, our mental health is kind of at the core of our ability to work. There's there's like this mythology that artists are tortured, that you have to be miserable in order to do good work, that like all of your work has to come out of pain, or you know, like there's just so much misery involved in this traditional notion of what it is to be an artist. For me, art is healing, quite literally. And outside of like the act of creation, I've learned that it's critical for me to practice mental health, you know, like care every day. And it's something that I think was hard to learn. You know, it's humbling to think, you know, everybody's practices are going to look different, but for me, it's like I need to meditate every day. I need to write every day. I need to move my body every day. I need to make space for myself to have emotions. Sometimes that can be messy. But allowing it and being honest about it and giving it the space that it needs is what allows you to move through things honestly, rather than like repressing things or saying, oh, it doesn't matter or what have you. So I think my mental health is good because I work on it, you know, prioritize it.
I agree. I 1000% agree. I think definitely the stigma of an artist is the darkness, you know, but I don't really agree with it. I think most artists are trying to heal themselves half the time when they're creating.
Yeah.
So for me, mental health is very important. I love asking that question because it it's a little personal, yes, but it's something that I want to know
Yeah.
because I've been, you know, I've dealt with some situations where I wish someone would ask that question.
Yeah.
And you know, they may have not been able to like pull me out of the darkness, but at least sometimes it feels good to share.
Absolutely.
And if the person can pull you out of the darkness, hey, you're welcome to try. You know? But it's just good sometimes to just, if you feel like you can share that, you can share that. I don't mind if people don't want to answer it, you know, but I appreciate it when they do.
Yeah.
It lets me know that there's a process that they're going through, and
absolutely.
they just don't feel alone in that sense.
And I think the darkness is part of it. It's not, for me, it's not about like getting away from that, but rather acknowledging it and making space for it, communicating about it, working through it, incorporating it, giving it space, and not being afraid of it, you know? Because I think that's the other side of the coin, is that like we tend to fear that so much because it's very potent and it is scary, or maybe we fear it's going to be uncontrollable. But acknowledging it and, you know, letting it come into the light, if you will, makes the difference between like just trying to control everything and keep it down.
Yeah. And I also think that most artists are very sensitive people in the sense of spiritually and with energy. So it's almost as if these things come to us, and when we create something from it, somehow it tends to reach other people that need to come out of the darkness. Interesting pattern here that I realized. Something similar came up in a different interview, and the answer was almost the same, in the sense of like, yes, we may be in a darkness often, but what we try to do is bring other people to the light, because we're able to withstand it.
Yes,
we don't want to dwell in it, but for some reason we are able to withstand it.
Yes.
And yeah, I think that's an interesting thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you're an artist. We're gonna go into the family portion of this, because the being an artist and then a family, being the artist in the family tend to be an interesting role to have. You know, we all can agree. How does your family, you know, respond to your artwork, or respond to you being an artist in general? I mean, other than, yes, you were a musician to start with, but now you're painting and having exhibitions and etc. How do they react to those things?
I am so lucky and blessed. My family is incredibly supportive, and they always have been. My parents, like, from day one, you know, when I first started playing on a little keyboard that somebody gave me, they were like, okay, I think this kid needs some music lessons, you know?
Yes.
My mom hauled me to music lessons every week from the time I was 7 until I started driving, you know? My parents had no qualms, like, letting me be an artist. Or a musician, or what, you know, creative person. It was fine. It was not the situation where, like, oh no, you have to choose a traditional career.
Be a doctor.
Right. So I was just incredibly lucky in that respect, and they still are super supportive. My siblings the same. My husband, like, beyond supportive. He does everything with me. Helps me hang shows, helps me run open studios, just he's my like constant sounding board when I'm trying to solve problems.
Takes BTS pictures.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. So I have an amazing support team. Not only blood relatives, but also my chosen family. You know, my friends that are here are an amazing support network as well.
That's awesome. I'm happy to hear that. That's always great to hear. I think the support of an artist is very important to their success. I mean, it can go both ways. I feel there's been artists who's persevered through the loneliness, but when you have that support system, it makes everything a little bit easier.
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
Mental health. You know.
Yeah.
Speaking of support system and friends and networking, how is your support system in the art industry of Miami? How well do you get along, or maybe not get along, but how well do you navigate in the art industry in Miami?
Yeah. I mean, I am new, relatively speaking, in terms of like, I've just been doing this for a couple of years, but I am finding so many people to be incredibly welcoming, supportive, you know, going out of their way to help me connect with others. I've just been blown away and like so grateful for the people here in this arts community. You know, there's so many organizations that are working to help artists. There's so many things that you can go to hear people speak. There's something you can do almost every single night of the week, you know, to go and learn and connect with people. It's just been a really wonderful experience over the last couple of years, like going out to stuff and meeting people. I've honestly been blown away by the quality of friendships and connections that I've been able to make.
That's awesome. That's amazing to hear. I'm happy to hear that. You say you're relatively new, but how would you describe your career so far? Like, how would you describe your artist career so far in Miami?
Yeah.
Has it been good?
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, nothing goes as quickly as you want it to. When you're launching out on a new venture, things always take more time than you expect. Or like your fantasy idea of like, oh, I want to go out and have 10 shows this year, you know. It takes time to build things. It takes persistence. It takes like consistency and all of that. But that's part of the game, and that's the same no matter what you're doing. So it's been a great experience for me here. I think that you know, there's so many galleries, there's so many arts institutions, there's so many shows that happen, the fairs that come in December. There's a plethora of opportunities. You know, like I mentioned before, I spent 15 years in the design industry, only sort of privately doing any personal artwork. It wasn't until about 2 years ago that I started like, okay, I want my family to see my work. I want my friends to see my work, you know? And so I'm like, even though as a creative professional, I'm very established. As an artist, I'm still building the machine, right? I'm still getting things going, but there's so much that's happening right now that's really exciting to me and really encouraging. So I'm feeling really, really good about the trajectory.
I love it. Man. So this is going to be my final question. It's a question that you basically don't have to have an answer for, but I like to ask anyway. 5 years from now, where do you see yourself, and what do you need to do to get there?
I see myself in a much bigger studio space where I have room to create giant works.
Okay.
where I have the opportunity to do sculptural things, you know, like I just scale. I wanna go big. I wanna go really big with my work. I see my work out there in the public, you know, like out there in the world where people just random people can happen across the work. You don't need to be in the art industry, you know, you don't need to be a collector going out to galleries, like out there in the world where people taking the bus or going to the supermarket can see it. I really believe in like the impact that I want to have and kind of calling people to tend to themselves and care for themselves and, you know, consider healing processes and come into the light, as you said. That's the ultimate impact that I want to have. And I think I've taken the time to figure out like how to take care of myself, and I've have kind of this rhythm of going out and meeting people, inviting people to come see my work, making the connections, and, you know, just showing up over and over and over again. I know that the strategy will get fine-tuned, but I think in essence, like I've got the practices. Now it's just a matter of repetition and being consistent and pivoting when I need to.
I love it. I love it. Well said. Beautifully said. I can definitely feel that you're someone that's very intentional, purposeful, and I believe you're moving a way that will definitely lead you to accomplishing those things. I think you're going to be very, very successful in that way, in whichever way you want to be, honestly. But definitely I can see you being someone that will be impactful. You know, that's just, sometimes I go into a trance and I speak some things, you know, and right now I am in that trance and I'm speaking to you in a way to tell you that I believe you will do these things, that you will accomplish these things. Just keep working, stay consistent, and which I believe you already do. Man, it's just insane. And yeah, I 1000% believe in you and your work. It's very beautiful. It has a very interesting feeling to it. It's very calming, like I was saying before. It's very calming and peaceful. Like being in the studio right now, like I feel like I'm in a trance. You know, I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm like that all the time. You know, so with that said, do you have any upcoming shows or anything, or you'd like to share with the people? Definitely your Instagram and your website.
Yeah, my Instagram and my website, Rebecca K. White, is my Instagram. I just had an open studio last night. I love having groups of people over to my home and my studio to see the work in a home context. It's such a more intimate feeling than like just being out in a gallery that's less personal. So I'm probably planning to do another one of those early fall, like after people come back from the summer exodus. You know, I'll probably do another thing like that. So
Awesome. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, this is Ricardo Laventure.
Rebecca White.
And this has been Co-Creating Act in studio with Rebecca White. Thank you for being here with us, and goodbye.